The old wooden door of the Rusty Mug groaned when I pushed it open, the same tired sound it made every Friday night. It was my one small ritual in a life that felt borrowed. The air inside was thick with the familiar smell of spilled beer, sawdust, and something vaguely like regret. It wasn't a happy place, but it was a place where nobody asked questions, and for me, that was enough. I found my usual spot at the far end of the bar, a stool that wobbled just a little, tucked away in the shadows. From here, I could see the whole room without having to be a part of it. I was just another ghost, nursing a cheap beer, letting the low rumble of conversation and the crack of pool balls wash over me. My name is Chloe. At least, that's the name on my driver's license now. The name I used before feels like it belongs to a different person, a girl who was harder, stronger, and who isn't here anymore. I work at the town's hardware store, stocking shelves and mixing paint. It's quiet work. It's simple. I like simple. Life used to be very, very complicated. Tonight, the bar was louder than usual. A group of bikers had rolled in, their leather vests patched with skulls and eagles, their laughter booming and bouncing off the dark wood-paneled walls. They were big men, beards thick and voices gravelly, and they took up space like they owned it. I kept my eyes on my beer, tracing the condensation on the glass with my finger, trying to make myself smaller. Invisible. I'd gotten good at being invisible since I came home. Back in the world, people look at you, but they don't see you. They see a quiet woman in her late 20s, maybe a little sad around the eyes. They don't see the sandstorms or the taste of dust that never really leaves your mouth. They don't see the weight you carry, a rucksack of memories that you can never set down, the leader of the biker crew, a mountain of a man with a graying beard and a tattoo of a snarling wolf on his neck, slammed his mug on the bar. Another round for my boys, bartender. And put a smile on your face, old man, life's too short. The bartender, a wiry old guy named Sal who had a faded navy anchor on his forearm, just grunted and started pulling taps. He'd seen it all. Nothing fazed him. I tried to tune them out, to sink back into my own little world. I started thinking about Miller. I always ended up thinking about Miller in places like this. He would have loved the noise, the raw energy. He would have challenged one of the bikers to a game of pool, charmed them with his lopsided grin, and probably ended up drinking for free all night. Miller was life itself, a bright, burning flame. I was just the smoke he left behind. Hey, princess. You all alone over here? The voice was like gravel grinding next to my ear. I didn't look up. I knew if I made eye contact, it would be an invitation. Rule 1, never engage. A heavy hand landed on the bar next to my glass, fingers thick as sausages. It was the big one, the wolfneck leader. Grizz, I think his friends called him. I said, are you all alone? He repeated, his voice louder, impatient. I finally lifted my head, just enough to meet his gaze for a second. I gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of my head. I wasn't alone. I was with my ghosts. I just wanted him to take the hint and leave. He laughed, a harsh, booming sound. Playing hard to get. I like that. He leaned closer, and the smell of stale smoke and whiskey washed over me. What's the matter? Too good to talk to us? I just shrugged and took a sip of my beer, my heart starting to beat a little faster. Not with fear, not really. It was a different feeling. A cold, familiar readiness that I had spent years trying to forget. My body was tensing up, my senses sharpening. The old training, buried deep, was starting to stir. I hated it. Look at me when I'm talking to you, he snarled, his good humor vanishing. His hand shot out and gripped my chin, forcing my head up. His thumb pressed hard against my jaw. The bar got a little quieter. I could feel eyes on us. Sal, the bartender, paused and wiping a glass, his knuckles white. I looked straight into the biker's eyes. They were small and dark, set in a weathered face. I saw nothing in them but arrogance. Please let go, I said, my voice quiet but steady. He laughed again, releasing my chin and patting my cheek with a condescending smack. There we go. That wasn't so hard, was it? He turned to his friends. She's a shy one. They all hooted with laughter. I felt a flush of heat creep up my neck. It wasn't embarrassment, it was anger. A slow-burning fuse had been lit. I just wanted to be left alone. Why was that so hard for people to understand? I finished my beer in 2 long swallows. The cold liquid doing nothing to cool the fire in my gut. I placed the empty glass on the bar and pulled a $10 bill from my pocket. Time to go. The night was ruined. As I slid off the stool, he blocked my path. He was huge, a wall of leather and denim. Whoa, where you going, sweetheart? The party's just getting started. I'm leaving, I said, trying to step around him. He put a heavy arm on my shoulder, stopping me. I don't think so. We were just getting to know each other. I'm not interested, I said, my voice dropping to a lower register. The ice was spreading through my veins now. Move. It was a mistake. The command in my voice, the lack of fear, it challenged him. It wasn't the reaction he wanted from a shy princess. His eyes narrowed, the wolf on his neck seeming to snarl. "You got a lot of nerve for such a little thing," he growled. His hand tightened on my shoulder, his fingers digging in. "Maybe you need to be taught some manners." And then he did it. With a grunt of frustration, he grabbed the front of my simple, gray t-shirt with his other hand and ripped it. The sound of tearing cotton was shockingly loud in the now silent bar. It ripped straight down the middle, from the collar to my stomach. The cool air of the bar hit my skin, and for a split second, all I felt was a profound sense of shock and violation. My plain bra was exposed, my skin was exposed, and I felt 100 pairs of eyes on me, stripping me bare. The humiliation was a physical blow, and it took my breath away, but the silence that followed wasn't just about me. It was about what? The torn shirt revealed, there, on my left shoulder, covering the top of my arm, was my tattoo. It wasn't a delicate flower or a pretty butterfly. It was the eagle, globe, and anchor. The emblem of the United States Marine Corps. The ink was dark and bold, the eagle fierce, its wings spread wide. The globe showed the Western Hemisphere. The fouled anchor was hooked behind it. Beneath it, in stark black letters, were the words Semper Fidelis. Grizz, the biker, froze. His hand was still holding a piece of my ruined shirt, but his eyes were locked on the tattoo. His jaw went slack, the arrogant smirk wiped clean from his face. The blood drained from his cheeks, leaving his weathered skin looking pale and sickly. Under the dim bar lights he stared at it, and in his eyes, I saw a storm of emotions. Shock. Disbelief. And then, something else. A flicker of recognition, and a deep, gut-wrenching shame. The entire bar was dead quiet. You could have heard a pin drop on the dusty floorboards. The bikers, his friends, who had been laughing and jeering moments before, were silent, their faces a mixture of confusion and awe. Sal, the bartender, stood perfectly still, his eyes on my shoulder, and a slow nod of understanding passed over his face. He knew what he was seeing. Grizz slowly, very slowly, let go of the piece of my shirt. It fell to the floor like a dead leaf. He took a half step back, as if the tattoo itself had physically pushed him away. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his thick neck. You're a... He couldn't finish the sentence. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, my ruined shirt hanging off me, my heart hammering against my ribs. But the feeling inside me was changing. The humiliation was being burned away by a flood of memories. I saw the recruiting office, the stern-faced gunny who told me I didn't have what it takes. I saw Paris Island, the mud and the sweat and the screaming, the feeling of being broken down into nothing and then built back up into something stronger. I saw the day I earned that emblem, the day I finally became a Marine, a feeling of pride so fierce it felt like it could split my chest open, and I saw Miller, grinning at me in the tattoo parlor in Jacksonville. "Get the biggest one they have, Chloe," he'd said. "You earned it. Wear it like a badge of honor." We got them on the same day, matching emblems on the same shoulder. His was for his father, a Marine before him. Mine was for me, for the scared girl I used to be. It was a promise to myself that I would never be weak again. All of that, my entire history, everything I was and everything I had lost, was etched into my skin. It wasn't just ink. It was a scar. It was a memorial. It was my soul, laid bare for this whole grimy bar to see. Grizz finally found his voice. It was a hoarse whisper, nothing like the booming roar from before. What unit?" "3rd Battalion, 5th Marines," I said, my own voice sounding distant to my ears. "Dark Horse." A visible shudder went through him. Anyone who knew anything about the Corps knew that name. They knew the price that unit had paid in Sanjin, Afghanistan. He took another step back, his big hands now hanging uselessly at his sides. "Oh, God," he breathed, and he looked truly, deeply ashamed. He looked down at my torn shirt, then back at my face, and for the first time, he wasn't looking at a princess or an object. He was looking at a person. He was looking at a veteran. He was seeing me. I am so sorry," he stammered, the words clumsy in his mouth. "I had no idea. I'm a vet. Army. 101st Airborne." It clicked. The arrogance, the way he commanded. His space, it was a different version of the same training. But he had crossed a sacred line. Vets don't do that to other vets. There's an unspoken code, a bond forged in shared experience, even between branches. He hadn't just assaulted a woman, he had disrespected a sister in arms. He turned to his friends, his face a mask of fury and self-loathing. "We're leaving. Now." They didn't argue. They started moving towards the door, their boisterous energy completely gone, replaced by a somber quiet. They looked at me as they passed, some with curiosity, some with a nod of respect. Grizz was the last to leave. He stopped in front of me again, his head bowed. He reached into his leather vest and pulled out a thick wad of cash. He peeled off several $100 bills and tried to press them into my hand. For the shirt, he said, his voice thick with emotion. For everything. Please. I looked at the money, then back at his face. I shook my head. I don't want your money. Please, ma'am, he said, and the word ma'am from this giant of a man was more stunning than anything else that had happened. I need to. I gotta make it right. Just go, I said softly. He hesitated, then he laid the money on the bar. He looked at Sal. Make sure she gets it. He looked at me one last time, his eyes filled with a shame so profound it was almost painful to see. I'm sorry, he whispered again. And then he turned and walked out, the bar door groaning shut behind him, leaving a void of silence. The bar stayed quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, the low murmur of conversation started up again, but it was different. Softer. More subdued. I was still standing there, my shirt in tatters, feeling strangely calm. Sal came out from behind the bar. He was holding an old, faded flannel jacket. He draped it gently over my shoulders without a word. I pulled it around me, the soft fabric a comfort against my cold skin. Thanks, Sal, I mumbled. He just nodded, his eyes kind. He slid a fresh, full beer in front of my stool. This one's on the house, he said. Then he leaned in a little closer. His voice low. Semper Fi, Marine. And that's when the dam broke. A single tear traced a path down my cheek, then another. I wasn't sobbing, but a deep, aching grief I had been holding in for years was finally leaking out. It wasn't just about the biker, or the shirt, or the humiliation. It was about Miller. It was about the friends I'd lost. It was about the part of myself I had buried when I came home, the part one thought I had to hide to be normal again. For years, that tattoo had been a private thing, a reminder for me and me alone. It was a reminder of my promise to Miller, the one I made over his flag-draped coffin, to live a full life for both of us. A promise I had been failing to keep by hiding myself away in the shadows. Tonight, that man had ripped my shirt, but he had also ripped away the veil I had been hiding behind. He had forced me to show a part of myself I kept hidden, and in doing so, he had reminded me of who I was. I wasn't just a quiet hardware store clerk. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a ghost. I was a Marine. I sat there for another hour, sipping the beer Sal gave me. No one bothered me. No one even looked at me for too long. But I didn't feel invisible anymore. I felt seen. I felt respected. In the strangest, most violent way, that biker had given me a piece of myself back. When I finally left, I pulled Sal's jacket tighter around me and walked out into the cool night air. I left the money on the bar. I didn't need it. As I walked home under the streetlights, I looked down at my own 2 feet, moving steadily on the pavement. I thought about the long road I'd walked, from a scared kid to a Marine, and then to this quiet, broken person trying to find her way tonight. For the first time in a long time, it felt like I was finally walking in the right direction. The weight on my shoulders was still there. It would always be there. But for the first time, it didn't feel like it was crushing me. It just felt like a part of me. A part one didn't have to hide anymore. I was still Chloe. But tonight, in the quiet dark of my small town, I remembered that I was also a Marine. And that was something no one could ever tear away.